doing. And that led to the murder and injury of more than 6 people in 1979. And years later, they had a truth process. So we were learning from all of that stuff. And we started getting people from all around the country coming in to testify. We had folks, Sandra Bland, I don't know if folks have heard of her, but her relatives came to Ferguson and testified. Their stories and participate in community healing work. Tamir Rice's sibling, so many other people just from around the country came. And in 2016, we were coming up, well, we were focusing on youth telling their story. We had worked with StoryCorps, and we worked with some local groups who focus on story to help these young folks who had relatives who had been murdered by police to talk about it and to work through it and heal. And one of the drummers, we would couch all of our work in ceremony. One of the drummers had relatives, his grandparents, who had 100 years before escaped across the Mississippi River from the East St. Louis riots that had happened. It was called the East St. Louis Race Riots. It should be called the East St. Louis White Supremacist Massacre, because that's what happened. In 1917, owners of a plant who had been recruiting Black folks from the South, because many of the white men were away in World War I, convinced them to come up north and work in this plant. And when they got back, they were angry at our community. And it took one accused incident, and the old Black community was on fire. People reported mothers being thrown back into houses that were burning. And my friend's grandmother, feel free to Google that too. Look, everything I'm talking about, feel free to look it up. I think it's part of uncovering truth in our nation. But he was telling us this after the opening of the ceremony. We were standing in the back and testimony was starting. And he said, I just realized that, it'd be 100 years since my grandparents escaped in a rickety boat across the Mississippi River because the Missouri State Police were blocking people across the footbridge when they were trying to come over. So we were talking about this, and this also pushed us really to think about reparations. How do we talk about truth and not talk about reparations? Especially when you have folks, the Reverend Jennifer Harvey, who writes that if white folks want racial reconciliation, they should consider reparations. As well, we were thinking about, having our organization come out of the peace movement for all intents and purposes. One of our big purposes was connecting war, our expenditures, which are in the trillions and trillions, on war abroad with war at home. Those are connected. And we wanted to do that work. And we faced a lot of critiques from some of our friends in the peace movement at that time. And what they were saying is, why aren't you focusing on reconciliation and forgiveness? And what I was saying is that, look, I have to forgive personally just to be all right and walk in the world and not be angry. But to forgive as a community is a political act. It's like if somebody keeps doing something, do you just forgive without some kind of acknowledgement and also commitments to not do harm and address the harm that you do. And so that's the perspective we were coming from. And so we began to say that reparations is the midpoint between truth and reconciliation. And for us, that centered the sacredness of those folks who had told the truth and those who experienced harm. In addition, you have some of the same sentiments from Jennifer Harvey and also Jody Geddes, who wrote the book, the little book of racial healing. And we also began organizing with groups like Fellowship of Reconciliation. At the time, I was a senior Bayard Rustin Fellow, and we worked with Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth and in COBRA, which is a national coalition of blacks for reparations in America, to work on a reparations campaign. And the first, our approach was to look at how, since we had been organizing against police violence and against war in the church, we thought we would also begin organizing for reparations in faith and spiritual communities. So that work began in 2019 with probably 50 or 60 congregations hosting a Reparations Sunday and Reparations Sabbath. And we started looking at the doctrine of discovery and the ways that Christianity was complicit in harm against community, but also as a way to look at reparations not as punishment, but as spiritual practice. Reparations, which is a concept that is part of every single spiritual tradition and religion, that when you do something wrong, you make amends and you do what is asked by those you have harmed. We started looking at reparations, particularly from the United Nations, who in the 90s held a conference against racism in Durban, South Africa, where the US walked out of that conference in protest to the very subject matter. But that conference still produced an understanding of reparations that said, after a gross crime against humanity, reparations are due, and it's not just money. One of the Northeastern lead in the Universalist Unitarian is Willard Lett, and he would often say that compensation is necessary but not sufficient. And so the UN described reparations as restitution, the return of what was stolen. It's also to return a community that was harmed to that condition before that harm. There's also compensation, which is about money, but also, I think, about land, so is restitution. Then there's satisfaction, which is about acknowledgement and education that goes beyond lesson plans, but is about what do we teach our kids about when we do something wrong? Do we tell our children that we are accountable? Do we act in ways that reflect accountability? How do we address the decades and hundreds of years that the U.S. has miseducated the world about Black people? So that in Berlin, they recently had a conference on Afrofuturism, and not one Black artist was invited or present. That Black and indigenous bodies can be present as a token or a something to be looked at or gawked at, or pieces of bodies, but actual humans, who they are, their culture, is not really welcome. Reparations has also been described by the UN as healing, not just the kind of touchy-feely healing where we stand in a circle, but addressing mental health, addressing spirit, the fact that our religions were stolen. You know, when the Pope repudiated the doctrine of discovery for indigenous people just a couple weeks ago, I was expecting more to come out about the enslavement, because the doctrine of discovery didn't just say steal their lands or take the lands of non-Christians. It said take the lands of non-Christians and enslave them in perpetuity. And so what does it mean to heal the theft, the destruction, the relegation of traditional African spirituality or indigenous Native American religions, poly or monotheistic type of faiths? What does that mean? And then for me, the most, I think, telling part of this definition of reparations that the UN offered, which to me speaks to, I think, something really deep, is this concept called guarantees of non-repeat. And I know we're at church, but sometimes I have to cuss. And to me, guarantees of non-repeat means don't do that shit no more. What does it take for us to do and act differently? And so when I say that reparations is a spiritual practice, I don't just mean that, you know, we're then acknowledging the sacredness of people. I mean that we are unraveling ourselves from systems of complicity that reinforce the way that we act and ways that we will continue to act. So in one commercial by Capital One, it says, "What's in your wallet?" And I would ask, what are you invested in? What's in your retirement account? Are you invested in companies that are invested in the prison industrial complex, where over 30 Congress people in the last election received money from private prisons and then went on to vote for private prisons that black and brown people are disproportionately housed in? Or what about weapons manufacturing? How many people have weapons companies that live off of death? I think the problem is simple here, that reparations means accountability for how we have been and how we choose to live now. And it could be so many other we have so many chances for accountability in our life. This is just the most recent one that have come in the news because of the 2020 election and because so many eloquent folks have spoke out. But it's an important one because it really speaks to who we are as a nation and the core of this country. Because, you know, I don't know if folks know this, but there's a book called Founding Brothers by historian Joseph Ellis, and he wrote, describing the Constitutional Congress, that the first founding generation passed an unsaid rule that they wouldn't report on the specific conversations that happened because they were arguing vigorously over slavery. whether we gonna have a revolution and still have enslaved people. And we know what came out of that. But what we don't know is that they chose not to release that information until that first generation of founders were dead. Why was that? Anybody know? Why would you hide or slow the release of the decision to make people 3/4 of a human? Or the inner workings under that? Why is that?
To protect their reputations and guarantee that they would be looked at as, wonderful people who founded this wonderful country. And keep their own slaves.
Yep.
That too.
Yep. I mean, they knew it was wrong. They knew it had to go.
They didn't want to change.
They
They
yeah.
didn't want to change. They wanted to keep same old, same old. They're going to wait until those people died so there wasn't going to be anybody to tell the truth about what really happened to those people at that time.
Yeah. They weren't.
Until they died, then they had no more voices to speak. They
They-
got rid of the evidence.
Exactly. They wanted to talk big stuff, tell the world how great we were. And I'm not saying there's not some greatness there, but how is greatness stymied? How is what we believe in stymied? Not just then, not just at the point of the civil rights movement. What about today when we're living in the aftermath of hundreds of years of slavery, Jim Crow? I don't know if y'all know this, but my dad came to St. Louis, Missouri when he was 13 years old, but that he picked cotton from the time he was 7 until he was 13 in Brownsville, Tennessee. Did y'all know that stuff still happened? Did we know that there are people imprisoned for money, that there are loopholes in state constitution that allow enslavement through prisons? Do we know that because of this, because of one loophole, one place, women are allowed to be enslaved and are trafficked every day? That the amount of indigenous women who are missing still goes uncounted? What happens when we allow some of the most heinous evil to continue in one place? What does that mean? I'm getting black church on you right now. What does that mean? It means that we are complicit, and it means how do we unravel ourselves from complicity in this moment? Part of it, the psychologists Dr. Medria Collins and Brian Connolly write in an article, Transforming Ghosts into Ancestors. They talk about the way that when people experience or they see something, they have what's called moral injury. And psychologists first documented moral injury after people were coming back from Vietnam and having witnessed very horrific things that they had a kind of post PTSD. It's different though. It's like your whole notion of yourself breaks because they've witnessed something so horrific. And they have a hard time dealing with the fact that they were somehow complicit in this. And I think that one of the things that we have not acknowledged or grappled with is that white folks have witnessed and tried to hide so much. There's entire genres of music as a result of the shit that white folks have tried to hide. Grunge, white kids playing hip hop for their parents because of the violence underneath the malaise, underneath the manicured lawn. And so what does it mean to transform the lingering energy of people who immigrated here, who may be descendant from those who came on the Mayflower or before, because those folks didn't come to do evil necessarily. They were escaping something. How many people know that most Europeans were colonized? Right? Europe was a result of conquest by Rome, religion, then feudal power, then even women, even more, according to one author who describes the witch hunts as essentially the work of feudal powers to create a permanent classification for women under capitalism, so that no longer women in Europe would be connected to medicine or the indigenous religions, but now connected to the home, and their permanent job is having babies and raising families. But it's not just that, it's just the wholesale disconnection. And that's also what these authors are talking about, this transformation. What they're essentially saying is that the result of colonization and all of this harm in Europe had this energetic pull that extended over into the Americas. This unresolved, where instead, if you were Jewish and your people were escaping the Holocaust, or you are Irish and you were escaping famine, when you got to America, what did they tell you? You okay now because you white. At least you not a nigger. What kind of healing is that? What kind of healing is it to be forced to make money off of somebody further on down the hierarchy? How do we transform Ghost, who wanted something for each and everybody in this room, into ancestors? It is the unraveling in the everyday. It is if you know a product in a grocery store is owned by a company that supports war, don't support it. And on and on and on. It is about dealing with anxiety around talking with race. It is about reevaluating your origin story. We worked hard, so did everybody else. And you got help. Didn't nobody pull their own self up by their damn bootstraps. And the work that I'm doing now, I call it reparations praxis. In this sacred season of reparations that we have in the Grassroots Reparations Campaign, begins on Juneteenth, where we reflect on the history of slavery, and goes into the 4th of July, where we read and reconsider what our history should be. And then to August, where that whole month is dedicated to Black August, where we celebrate freedom fighters. And we encourage folks to have Reparations Sunday and Sabbath all through August. But also at Kibilio, where we're a queer, Black, intentional community, and we're focused on indigenous, reproductive, reparative, and other forms of social justice and reconnecting with the land. It's also about you reconnecting with the land, your ancestors, in ways that aren't perpetuating lies or things that they weren't comfortable talking about. And we can continue to talk about this, but I just want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to pass this message on about this transformation of ghost into ancestors, this reconnection. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Let's sing 157, Step by Step, the Longest March. Longest march can be. Stand. Let's start again. A march. And stand up. Stand up. Step by step, the longest march can be won. Can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, and by union we can still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none. One more. Step by step, the longest march can be won, Many stones can form an arch, singly none, and by union that we can be. Drops of water and singly none. Can be one. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, and by union that we can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none. Now we have time in our service for sharing joys and sorrows. If you have a sorrow that needs the help of this community to carry it, or joy so great that you must share it, now is the time. Not a time for announcements. We'll have that after the service. It's a very great joy that we have some visitors here today. If you care to, we would love for you to stand and introduce yourself. It's not required, but it's cool. And now is our time for welcoming visitors and sharing joys and sorrows. Rob will bring you a mic if you raise your hand.
Testing.
Just up.
I think it's on. No?
That's good. was on.
Sounding like it's on? Doesn't sound like it's on to me.
It's good.
Okay. I stand corrected.
Arthur Eaves and Myra Aronson. We're just visiting from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where we're members of South Church.
Welcome. Welcome.
And very good singers. I might.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ellen. It's a candle of sorrow. A friend of mine, Lucinda, has had cancer and has been in treatment for a couple of years, and I guess she thought it was beat, but it seems it's back. And so she'll be leaving this area in a little while and moving out west and to live with her daughter. And so I'm sad because she's been a big part of my life for about 5-6 years now, and she'll be gone. This happens a lot. People leave. Also, my brother Gene, who is 10 years younger than me, had a recurrence of cancer also, and he's in treatment and is handling it well, and said he's coming to visit, which is nice, but there's this worry that I have that kind of hangs in the background, and he's very positive and sure of himself, and life goes on, and he does all kinds of positive things, and I just can't get there somehow. So I worry. On the positive side, a bit of joy for myself. I lost like more than half my hair very quickly last February into March. Hair just fell all over the place, and the woman that comes and cleans for me was complaining that she had to keep cleaning the vacuum cleaner because she was picking up so much hair. And it's growing back. I'm so excited. Somebody complimented me on my haircut last week. And I was like, I laughed because it's not a haircut. It's just finally growing back. And even my voice, which is still scratchy, is somehow I can sort of sing a little bit as we sing. So that's a positive thing, and I'm happy about that. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Baker, and my small sorrow is I will not be with you next weekend when we do the annual meeting, but I will be out in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and at my nephew's and soon-to-be niece's wedding, and which I feel a great joy about, because they're two people who I think really should be married to each other. And I'll be escorting my 90-year-old aunt out there, so it'll be, I think, a great family gathering.
Yeah, flimsy excuse.
Hi, I'm a visitor. My name is Sharon Alpert, and I came here to hear Dave Ragland speak.
Welcome, Cher.
Oh, my name is Pam. I'm a Quaker UU, one of those that hasn't been practicing listening so much as speak truth to power, put foot in mouth. But I wanted to say that I'm very grateful for the message you brought today. And we are missing the people like Molly Chambers, who spent 18 years, 19 years developing the Anti-Racism Film Festival, and who's in Washington right now, and probably listening to this online. And so we're missing some Soul Force people. And but I think the message you brought has more echoes than just the folks who are in this room right now. And we are grateful that you brought us this message today. And some of us stick with it, you know.
Anybody on Zoom that wants to light a candle, have a candle lit?
Morning, church. My name's Annie. First candle. It's joy and sorrow, actually. Thank you so much, David. Thank you for all the voices that could never be heard, never been able to speak, or all the lies that have been told for generations and generations, that with your voice and other people's voice and a willingness from white people and other people to actually not only hear the message but act on the message that you bring today. I'm really grateful for it. And candle of sadness. My good friend Jody of 33 years or 40 years, doesn't matter, lost her husband to cancer. I'm going to her funeral, her husband's funeral today, and just light a candle for them. I'd appreciate it.
Good morning. I'm Carlin, and thank you to David. It means so much to me that you came and shared that message with us. And I have a particular joy in Kate Mason, who's offered to lead us in a discussion in our Seekers group after the church service today, so that we can talk more and explore more and listen more about this idea of turning ghosts into ancestors, which is very profound. Especially as my own aunt has been doing research on Ancestry.com. And I had always affiliated my mind, my imagination about my ancestors with my Russian ancestors who went through pogroms, Russian Jewish ancestors, but now I have found out that our people were, in fact, on the other side of the family on the Mayflower. And my aunt wants to take us around and visit sites of our ancestors on that side of the family next month. So this is very timely for me to just readjust and realize, oh, I am related to those people that I didn't think I was related to. Anyway, I'll be at the discussion today, and everyone here is invited, of course.
Did we have anyone on Zoom, Frank, who wanted to? Well, then if you got a joy, you're going to get a microphone.
So my joy is my kid is coming to town. I have not seen them for 2-3 years. So they've come to visit, and for work week, we'll talk about that later. And yeah, so I'm exceptionally happy about that. Katie, you can go ahead and unmute and share.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Catherine,
Yep.
or Katie, and I would like a candle lit of sorrow for a farm that got struck by lightning Friday, and it was the last farm, a dairy farm in Amherst, and their barn burned down and part of their house, and wonderful family, and such an extreme tragedy for the large community and anybody that had known them over the years, but also as a community to lose a farm like that. Thank you.
I have a candle of joy that Aria is helping to keep us not completely ancient and elderly and being here. So good to see my young friend Carlin back in a pew also, and my buddy Brian holding down the keys and even taking requests for tempo while presenting. On a far more lugubrious note, my daughter continues to really sink, and it's just so sad to watch her struggle. So if you could please light a candle of sorrow for Jazz. And lastly, you know, Dave, when I was in college, I got most of my African American education from a jazz musician named Gil Scott-Heron. And if people are not familiar with something called Black History / the World, it's the highest compliment I can give someone that you made me think of the eloquence in that piece. It's a spoken word piece that just does such an artful job of really deconstructing all the myths, and does it with tremendous linguistic precision and also just, great sarcastic humor throughout. So if anyone's interested, it's Gil Scott-Heron, Black History.
So I would like to light a candle for my good friends Wally and Juanita Nelson. Their whole life, he said, you don't got to pay. But they were on the buses before the buses. I'll tell you a quick story. She was on the train. She was 10. She was in the black train, right? And she said to her mother, I'm going to go up to every single train, white train. I'm going to sit in every seat. And the conductor said, no, don't do that. I wouldn't do. But anyway, Juanita Nelson did that. And they did it in a way that they were war tax resistors. They worked under the monetary way so they wouldn't have to pay taxes. And they taught through their actions and change. And do we light a candle for them, Wally and Juanita Nelson? Thank you, Wally. I miss them every day. I wish they were here. I was with them 25 years, but I don't know if 25 years was really enough. Here you go.
I just wonder, at some point, could I sing a song?
Go ahead.
It's now the time.
Good.
I would love for us all to come together with a song. I just came up for me, and my friend Ben Mertz sing this song. And I'm not going to stand, but I'm going to say the words. It goes like this. Racism, we gonna tear your kingdom down. You've been building up your kingdom all over this land. Racism, we gonna tear this kingdom down. The next one says like police violence. Next one's, whatever we wanna do. So I'm gonna stomp, if folks join with me. Racism, we gonna tear your kingdom down. Oh, racism, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Well, you've been building up your kingdom all over this land. Racism, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Police violence, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Police violence, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Oh, you've been building up your kingdom all over this land. Police violence, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Oh, oppression, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Oppression, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Oh, you've been building up your kingdom all over this land. Oppression, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Patriarchy, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Patriarchy, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. You've been building up your kingdom all over this land. Patriarchy, we're gonna tear your kingdom down. Oh, patriarchy, We're gonna tear your kingdom down.
All right. Spirit of community in which we share and find strength and common purpose. We turn our minds and hearts towards one another, seeking to hold in our hearts all our joys and sorrows, both spoken and unspoken. And let me just give a little bit of a benediction, and then we'll have postlude. This is by Nancy Wood. Hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of dirt. Hold on to what you believe, even if it is a tree that stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to my hand, even when I have gone away from you. Postlude? But no, we'll just do the postlude. We're not going to do prayer to friends. So just the postlude. We had our song. Brian.